Well, Alan, this is an incredible movie that you've created. Where did the idea for it spring from?
Thank you. I called Connor one day and I was like, what do we make a movie about? And she's like, I think BDSM and
Yeah.
ball gags
And
and the
hackers.
internet is sort of how she pitched it to me, and and a couple hackers.
And let's name the dude Connor.
Yeah, exactly. And the name of the guy Connor, so we're all confused on set. No, so Cicada 3301 is a real phenomenon. It's an international scavenger hunt that's been happening since 2012, and I think just makes for a really fun world that we can get wrapped up in. But I want to make something that is fun for everybody. Not everybody's interested in talking about dark web hacker stuff, and so so wanted to really infuse it with some magic and some fun. And I think the reaction that you probably had is what we were aiming for, which is like, I don't know what I just watched, but okay, that's a movie. So we just want to have fun and help people escape to something that we're not getting a lot of these days, in film.
Connor, how was Gwen originally described to you?
How was she? I mean, without giving anything away, but she was described as a really strong, smart woman. And then I was told a lot about what happens in the script, which I won't say here. And then and truthfully, when I look at Gwen, she's not like maybe the typical, I don't know what people think of when they think of a hacker. You don't really know, right? Because everyone's behind a screen. And so what I really liked about her is that she's just choosing to live this quiet life, working in a library so that she can pretty much get lots of computer time without being bothered. And she's really, really smart, and she's really badass and strong and quick-witted and funny and smart, and kind of a really nice contrast, I think, to Connor Black's character. So that's kind of the loose breakdown I got of who Gwen was.
Alan, why was it so important for you not to make this just a normal spy thriller and infuse comedy into this great moments? I mean, Carver's the bad cop, and Avi has some great moments of levity as well.
Yeah, I just think people aren't interested. I mean, I'm guessing, I don't know, but I don't want to speak out of turn, but I just don't think people are interested in movies about computers. We live with them every day. If somebody is interested in the dark web and knows how to use that world, they probably don't want to watch a movie about it that's not going to get it right, exactly, because it has to be made, we've got to adapt it for film and make it interesting to watch. And I just don't think there's any way to win if it's purely about the internet, or computers or hacking. And there's a few films that, in fact, when I wrote this script, it was back in 2014, and I'd spent a lot of time researching this and writing it. And I was very interested in it, and I thought it would make a good film. And a movie had come out. I'm not going to say which one, but it bombed. I mean, it did not do well. And I was like, son of a, I just finished my script and I'm like, it's never going to get made. I think if a film like this doesn't have a sense of humor and can't be a little self-deprecating, I just don't think it's going to land with people. But aside from that, I grew up in a world of Back to the Future and Jurassic Park and Zemeckis and Spielberg in their heyday, and films with magic. And I want to tell stories that have a little magic, even if it's something like this, related to something like Cicada 3301, a real phenomenon.
We know about how Connor got her work here, but how involved were you then with the casting of the other roles?
Pretty involved. Yeah, I mean, I think got really lucky with the cast. When I wrote this, it was back before I started directing, and I really wanted to write a smart character for myself because I've got this very subtle chip on my shoulder of having come out of a modeling world when I was a kid, and that I want to contribute some thought to life. And wanted to write a smart character. And in the amount of time that had gone by between writing it and getting it made, I'd begun directing, and to me, I mean, that's really, I think, where my calling is, and where I have the most fun on set, you know. So I just enjoy the challenge, and I wanted to direct, and I didn't want to be in every single scene and direct my first feature. I knew there needed to be some room for error there. So I went out and was very lucky to find Jack. And when I talked to him on the phone, he was on a road trip in the car the first time. We were like on FaceTime, and he was just he's just the guy. I mean, he's just the guy. As soon as you talk to him, he's like, yeah, so no, I read the script. Like, it's really cool, man. You know, like, it's so, I don't do a lot of computer stuff, you know, but this is good shit, man. You know, I'm like, he looks like he could spend a little time in jail and work at a bar, but also be really smart. And he's the guy, you know. So you know, I just got very lucky. And then same thing with Ron Funches. He's a stand-up comic by trade. He's acting a lot now because he's really good. But you know, wanted to find somebody with heart and depth and character, but also somebody with a pretty quick wit. And you know, I'm always looking for somebody that can take the words on the page and make them better. You know, it's just kind of a blueprint for me, and everybody did that, you know, Conor included. So I got very lucky with the cast.
Conor, what were some of your favorite or maybe most challenging scenes for you to film for this one?
I think my favorite scenes were, I loved working with Ron. He was just such like a light, and both him and Jack offer such different funny moments. I really loved when the three characters finally started working together. I think those were some of my favorites because they're all so different that they just work well together. Like, and I think we've seen like trios a lot in film, and they don't always match, right? You're kind of like, that's usually like, three's a hard number, I think, sometimes to make work. And I think these three characters are so different and on this same mission together that it's just like fun. I loved when we got to the party scene and we just saw like some of my favorite hilarious moments are watching Ron try and navigate that whole thing. And so those are my favorite, as well as like truly the ones at Avi's house. They were just like, it felt like that was the moment in the movie where you're watching like all three of their brains kind of work together, and he's just got such comedic relief that like any moment where it would, and I think that is like, just to piggyback off what Alan said, why this works, because if we're then talking about something super intense and internet and Cody, he would just say something that would like bring it back, or Mr. Snuggles or his cat. I just thought like all of these little things that just made it so funny.
Yeah,
It was yeah, but I think those are definitely my favorite. But yeah, like the party stuff was really cool because just the set and how wild it all was and how extreme it all was made it for a really fun filming experience.
What was it like for you having to balance writing, directing, starring, all of these hats at the same time?
It was a lot. I'm not gonna lie, it's a lot. I mean, it's hard enough to produce a film or direct a film. You know, I mean, each one of those are kind of hard enough. But it's what we have to do today to get a film made. You know, so if you know, to anyone out there watching, if you want to make a film or a show or whatever it is, unfortunately these days you just have to be willing to do it all until you're lucky enough to get enough people involved where it's like, oh, now I have a line producer. I'm like, oh, thank goodness, I now have a DP and that gaffer. Okay, great. I don't have to do that, you know. But I mean, you just have to be willing to do every part until you don't, you know. And that's where I ended up. I wouldn't prefer to do it again, but I'm proud of what we made, and you know, did what we had to do to get it done. So.
The stunt work in this was epic. How involved then were you in kind of coordinating that, or did you let the stunt team just like fill in the blanks?
Yeah, thank you for that. You know, I had a really hard time conveying, you know, I learned a lot in how to communicate what's in my head on this film by watching how bad I was at communicating what was in my head. because I had very specific shots in mind. That, in fact, we kind of opened this film with this big oneer where, we've got a camera on a crane and it's on the ground and somebody's up high dangling off a ledge. And, as they fall from, an explosion blows them off the ledge, we pass them in the air and turn and come back down. And then we hear VO as we're chasing them down to the ground, like really technical, complicated shots. And trying to explain that to people when it hasn't been seen before on screen, you can't just go like, it's this shot, was really hard. And so everybody's going like, well, why don't we just cut to this, and then we'll cut into this. And I'm like, because that's not fun and cinematic and it doesn't feel like a big movie. And this is what's in my head and let's figure out how to get what's in my head. So it took a lot of time to get everybody on the same page. But once we got it figured out, I think they did a great job. And, those kind of shots, I think, really jump off the page, when you watch the film. I think the time that the stunt guys and everybody, that we all put in seems to pay off a little bit,
Conor, talk about Alan as the director versus Alan the co-star.
So what's really cool about this is by the time we did this now almost 3 summers ago, which is wild. But we did this after we filmed together for Titans, and I hadn't really done a lot of scenes with him at that point. So I really got to know Alan as Alan the director first, which was really cool. So that when we returned back to work, I was then getting to know him as Alan the co-star. And I think he did a really good job of, directing this thing that he had an idea for and that he also wrote. And so it was really cool for me because I think maybe a lot of people would think it was the opposite because of the show that we're on together, but it was actually first director and writer and then co-star. And there wasn't a lot of scenes with Agent Carter and Gwen in this. Like there was, days where you were at work together, but so it was a really cool way for me to get to know him. And I think he did a really good job.
Thanks.
Alan, what did you personally take away from this project? I mean, it's, like I said, it's really a beautiful mix of action and comedy. So as this being, something you touched on before, saying that maybe you wouldn't mix acting, directing, and writing at the same time again, but what did you personally take away from your experience doing this movie?
A lot. I mean, hundreds of takeaways. I mean, there was a lot. I learned a lot. I definitely don't think it's a good idea to wear so many hats. But again, when you're trying to convince an industry that you also are a director, you just, you got to do what you got to do. So hopefully I won't have to wear so many hats in the future. But I think, each role taught me a lot. I mean, I learned a ton in the editing bay, putting this together, having shot it and realized I would have done this differently, or like this actually worked out better than I thought. And I got to tuck all that away. And it was like that with every role, right? I mean, producing, writing, directing, each one taught me something. So I learned a lot, but I would prefer in the future to just one hat at a time.